Hey guys! Today we'll be recapping the Manhwa, The Last Straw. Please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, as it really helps our channel grow. Thanks. In the heart of a storm, where rain lashed against the windows like desperate fingers seeking entry, the night concealed a sorrow that gripped the Marquis Renard's mansion. With icy fingers, it was the night Arabella, his beloved daughter, went missing without a trace. As lightning split the sky, illuminating the darkness with its jagged brilliance, Marquis Renard and his wife embarked on a relentless quest to find their missing child. Each passing hour felt like an eternity, each false hope a cruel twist of fate. Though everyone thought it wouldn't take long to find her, Arabella was never found. The news that Marquis and his wife were searching for their missing daughter spread far and wide like wildfire, but amidst the chaos and confusion, one truth remained unshakable: Arabella was gone, leaving behind a void that no amount of searching could fill. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, yet Arabella remained elusive, a ghost haunting the halls of her family's once vibrant home. Countless individuals showed up at the manor, each claiming to be the lost daughter, but it was one disappointment after another. None could fill the void in the Marquise's heart. On a night much like the one Arabella had vanished, when her mother was sitting in her room, a figure appeared at the door, a beacon of hope amidst the darkness. Clad in a red dress, with innocence shining in her eyes, the girl entered and said, "It's time for dinner, mother." But as her mother's gaze fell upon her, a name escaped her lips, not Arabella, but Anita. She moved towards Anita, kept her hand on Anita's face, and in that moment, the weight of grief and longing lifted, replaced by a bitter realization. She said, "Anita, while you get to enjoy all these luxuries, I can't even imagine what hardships my Arabella must be going through." Anita looked at her mother with grief in her eyes when her mother said, "You may leave now." Anita's world shattered into a million fragments as the slap of reality stung her soul. With the slap on her face, her mother shouted, "I told you to leave!" Anita squeezed her hands and turned. Her mother sobbed, "Arabella, my Arabella," while Anita was taking each step back. She could hear her mother sobbing, "Everything Anita has should have been yours, Arabella." In the echoes of her mother's sobs, she found solace in the bitter realization that she was but a shadow cast by the absence of Arabella. Descending the staircase, each step was a silent testament to the unspoken tragedy of Anita's existence. After they lost Arabella, Marquis and his wife were forced to have another child to continue their lineage. While looking at the hanging picture of her parents, Anita thought to herself, "That child was me, Anita. I guess they couldn't bring themselves to love their second child they were forced to have because they felt too guilty toward Arabella." Growing up in a world where people only thought about Arabella, Anita had heard so many harsh words for her. She heard a maid holding a beautiful gown talking to others. "If Lady Arabella were alive, she would have been able to wear dresses like this," the other replied. "She had her mother's silver hair, so this color would have suited her." Lady Anita, on the other hand. Anita, sitting in a garden, was thinking, "There was only one person who actually paid attention to me, Axion, Archduke Licade's son, successor, my fiancé, and my only friend." Only Axion saw Anita for who she truly was, offering her solace amidst the storm of her existence. In his eyes, she found refuge from the storm, a glimmer of light in the darkness that threatened to engulf her whenever another fake Arabella came to the manor and distracted her parents. Axion would invite her to the Lacate Manor. There, she could just be Anita, instead of the girl who stole everything that should have belonged to Arabella. Anita reflected on the miraculous day when Arabella unexpectedly returned. "But one day," she said to herself, "as if to reward my parents' efforts." Upon spotting their missing daughter, her parents flinched, recoiled in disbelief, unable to trust their own sight. They dashed towards Arabella, yelling her name. A young girl dressed in tattered clothing stood there, in a state of disrepair. Arabella had finally returned, confirming her identity through the imperial holy relic. Her parents were ecstatic, embracing each other with joy upon finally locating their daughter after extensive efforts. She was indeed the real Arabella Renard, missing for 18 years. Upon finding her, her mother genially remarked, "My darling Anita," who was watching her parents, loving Arabella dearly, and seeing her thought, "I knew this day would come." Anita observed the activity throughout the entire household as her father addressed the workers. "We need brighter colors," her mother added her concerns. "She has had a rough life, so we must make her room bright and warm so she feels safe." A maid holding a carpet said, "I will bring another carpet." On the dining table containing various types of foods, everyone was gathered around Arabella. "Have some more dessert, my lady," a maid offered. Her father noticed her state and expressed worry. "You're far too skinny, my dear," her mother, while adding her concern, advised. "We need to feed her more nutritious food. I'll tell the chef to double the food budget," while displaying lovely dresses to Arabella. Her mother remarked, "Your dresses will be much fancier." Then Anita, thinking about jewels, she said, "Arabella should receive all of our family jewels as well, they belong to her in the first place." While thinking about fancier dresses, foods, and shows, Anita said, "My parents wanted to give Arabella the best of everything. That included both things I never received and ones that were already mine." As Anita strolled down the hallway, she was startled by a voice she heard. There must be a way to break off Anita's engagement to the Archduke's son. She was stunned hearing this. It turned out to be her parents murmuring to each other. Her father said, "We can't just break it off since the Archduke himself made the match." Her mother expressed her perspective, but His Grace addressed the proposal to Marquis Renard's daughter. Her mother, with evident concern, expressed, "If Arabella hadn't gone missing, she would have been the one to marry into their family. If we can find a way to break off the engagement, that spot will naturally become Arabella's." Her father pondered and said, Her mother yelled, "Bella deserves only the best, and I want to ensure she gets all of it." Marquis Renard embraced his wife warmly, while comforting her, and whispered, "My dear," while she was yelling, "It's heartbreaking, all of it belonged to Bella, but then she came along." He hugged her tightly while expressing his perspective. "I feel the same way. I never wanted to let Anita marry into the Archduchy. Arabella is a much more suitable lady of the house than Anita. We shall do our best to make it come true for her," her father said, while Anita was overhearing the whole conversation, wearing a red gown, standing outside the door, shocked to hear all this. "Anita must stay here and continue helping me with the family business," her father suddenly added. Then, a figure emerged, ethereal and commanding attention with his golden mane and piercing gaze. His presence, though unexpected, offered a brief respite from Anita's tumultuous thoughts. "What's got you so distracted? It's been a while since we've seen each other." His voice, like a soothing melody, reached her ears, stirring emotions long suppressed. Anita, laden with sorrow, struggled to articulate her anguish. "Oh, my apologies," she persisted, striving to reassure him. "I've been a bit busy lately. I am sorry for turning down your visits and—" Knock, knock. As they lounged in the opulent chamber, surrounded by decadent snacks atop a polished table, an ominous knock interrupted. "Are you expecting someone else besides me?" the boy inquired, his brow furrowed with concern. Taken aback by the unexpected appearance of someone, Anita exclaimed, "Of course not. Knock, knock." A second rap echoed through the room, irritation evident in her demeanor as the persistent knocking at the door interrupted their exchange. "Excuse me for a moment," Anita said. Clack. She swung the door open, a voice rang out. "Anita!" Standing before her were her mother and Arabella, their presence commanding attention. "Why don't you introduce Arabella to Lord Axion?" her mother commanded, her words a dagger plunging into Anita's soul. "She is your sister, after all. I'm sure he would like to meet her," she persisted. Upon hearing this, Anita's fury ignited, her spirit brimming with defiance as she contemplated the possibility of losing the one thing she held dear. In the crucible of adversity, Anita found the ember of her strength, fueling her determination to defy the whims of fate and protect the love she held dear. However, when it comes to Axion, she pondered, I will do everything to ensure they don't steal him from me. The air crackled with tension as her mother stood there, commanded to introduce Arabella to Axion. Inside, Axion's curiosity piqued as he wondered who stood at the threshold and asked, "Anita, who is it?" Anita's demeanor momentarily faltered when confronted with Axion's inquiry. Courteously and subtly, she turned slightly and uttered, "One moment." Then, she swiftly exited, forcefully closing the door behind her with a resounding slam. She left her mother bewildered as she confusedly asked Anita, "What are you?" Furiously, Anita declared, "I refuse." Shock painted her mother's face as she attempted to conceal her comprehension and stammered, "What?" Anita clarified her stance. "I will not introduce Arabella to Axion," she repeated. "I refuse." Her mother's shock turned to outrage. "What?" she yelled at her. "You're always like this." Arabella, positioned behind her mother, bewilderedly gazed and attempted to intervene, but her mother responded with anger. "Leave this to me, Arabella. She must be scolded." Her mother's fury escalated as she glared at Anita and said, "When will you stop being so selfish? Don't you feel sorry for your sister?" Undeterred, Anita snapped back, "It doesn't matter how sorry you feel for her. You can't just barge in and enforce your daughter on him." Anita added, "You're being rude to the Archduke's son, mother!" Once again, her mother shouted at her, "How dare you!" to bring her awareness. "How could you be so selfish and awful, Anita? You should be sharing with your sister." While Arabella was fidgeting continuously, confused at the situation, her breath quickening, she made an effort to halt her mother. "Mother, please don't." Arabella felt dizzy, stumbled, and suddenly collapsed, her world spinning out of control. Panic engulfed her mother as she cried out for her. "Bella! Bella! Bella, darling, please wake up." Anita, stunned by the turn of events, murmured, "I'll call for a doctor." With a cluttered rush, she turned and disappeared inside. Anita dashed through the halls with urgency, her heart racing. She hurriedly entered a room, nearly bumping into the maid. The maid, shocked, yelled, "Eek! A lady!" Anita, gasping and panting, wasn't able to utter a word. The maid flinched and asked, "Why are you in such a hurry?" Anita barely uttered, "Call for a doctor." The maid was shocked hearing this. "A doctor?" Anita hurriedly explained to the bewildered maid. Arabella fainted in front of the first reception room on the first floor. The maid gasped and could just ask, "A lady Arabella fainted?" The maid's trembling hands dropped the flower pot she was holding, mirroring the shock that rippled through Anita. "Yes, my lady, I'll call for a doctor right away," the maid said. Anita breathed deeply and turned back. Her thoughts raced faster than her feet as she retraced her steps. Each stride echoed the pounding of her heart, and her mind swirled with suspicion. The doctor who examined Arabella the day she arrived assured us she was in perfect health, so why would she faint so suddenly? Anita's mind whispered, wrestling with doubt. Suddenly, she paused, lost in her tumultuous thoughts. A chilling realization gripped her. Was this her plan all along? Axion, retaining his captivating demeanor, sat with inquisitive eyes. Arabella nervously sat in front of Axion, and suddenly her trembling voice shattered the tense silence as she stuttered. "I apologize for barging in like this." To alleviate the tension, she included, "Anita should be back soon." Axion offered a curt acknowledgement and said, "I see," his piercing gaze boring into Arabella, sending shivers down her spine. Arabella was sweating, scared, just pondering silently within her own mind. "Mother told me he was a polite young nobleman, but he's a bit scary." In the midst of Arabella's internal turmoil, memories flooded her consciousness like a raging river. The image of her concerned mother while she was just worried about Anita flashed before her. She must have been shocked seeing me faint like that. "I'm glad it didn't take me long to wake up," she recalled. Her mother's concern echoed in her mind. "Are you all right, Arabella?" "Arabella, I'm coming to consciousness," just responded. Where is Anita?" To steer clear of discussing Anita, Her mother simply remarked, "Don't mind her. Are you feeling all right?" After an epiphany, her mother uttered with a grin on her face, "This is it. You should go inside and introduce yourself to Lord Axion." While her mother was trying to pull her, Arabella could just utter, "Huh, what about Anita?" Her mother hastily replied, "She'll be back soon. Go ahead and wait in there." Arabella was trembling, sitting in front of Axion, questioning herself. Maybe he's mad that I barged in without asking him. Just like Anita said. Arabella felt extremely anxious, finding it increasingly difficult to remain seated. She yearned to flee and found herself engaging in silent self-talk within her mind. This is so suffocating. I don't want to be here. She squeezed herself while thinking about her parents' words. But I don't want to disappoint mother and father. Her father had said to her, "I am sure the Archduke's son will take a liking to you." Her mother had reprimanded her, "You have to make a good impression." "All right, I apologize for making you uncomfortable," she finally managed to utter, her voice betraying a hint of apprehension. Axion's response pierced the tension like a blade. "You have no reason to apologize to me. You weren't the one insisting on this unpromised meeting." Arabella's heart skipped a beat as realization dawned upon her. Oh, did he hear everything we said outside? The shock of the possibility reverberated through her, leaving her speechless for a moment. Axion continued, offering a slight smile along the way. "And as you said, Anita will be back soon." As she locked her eyes on him, a stream of thoughts flowed through her mind. He seems like a different person when he talks about Anita. Anita's mind swirled with a torrent of thoughts as she treaded through the mansion's corridors, her heart heavy with uncertainty. Did you go as far as fainting to fool me and meet Axion, or perhaps it was her own mother pulling the strings behind Arabella's actions? She also thought about her mother's harsh words. How could you be so selfish and awful, Anita? You should be sharing with your sister. She questioned herself. Was it mother's order? It must have been. She wants Arabella to have the best of everything, after all. Each step she took seemed to echo the resentment that lingered within the mansion's walls, a stark reminder of her isolation. Everyone in this mansion resents me. They look at me as if I'm someone who took everything from Arabella with no remorse. While contemplating, she doubted herself. Do I have to give everything of mine to Arabella just to be accepted in this household? Lost in this maze of confusion, she finally reached the door and hesitantly knocked. Knock, knock. With a creak, the door opened. She looked at Axion, and a poignant realization dawned upon her. Axion is the only one I can call mine. Do I give you up too? Axion turned with a smile. Arabella rushed towards Anita and said, Anita, and she immediately apologized. I'm sorry for worrying you. Whereas Anita, looking at her, just thought, You're here to take everything from me. Arabella gently squeezed Anita's hand and smiled. Where have you been? I was waiting for you. Anita continued talking to Arabella in her mind. So why are you smiling at me like that? As Arabella tentatively approached Anita, her heart raced with nervous anticipation. Having a glance at Axion, she began. Anita, but before she could finish, Anita abruptly said, You can go. Stunned, Arabella's face lit up with joy, as she stuttered. Are you really? Relief flooded through Arabella as Anita's words softened, revealing vulnerability. Upon noticing Axion's presence nearby, she whispered softly, Thank you? Arabella breathed, her fear dissipating in the face of unexpected understanding. Creak. She opened the door with a newfound sense of freedom. Arabella's face lit up with a genuine smile. Okay then, have a good time with Duke, Anita, she said, observing Arabella walking with genuine joy. Anita contemplated quietly. How strange. Arabella is the one who had a rough life growing up in poverty, and I was the one who enjoyed the luxuries of growing up in a noble house. She continued pondering. Still, somehow, Arabella is much more cheerful and innocent than I am. Creak. The door was closed. Anita's heart pounded with a mixture of guilt and relief as she turned towards Axion. her words heavy with regret. I apologize for my mother's rude behavior, Axion. Axion, with an air of grace, responded softly with a smile. It's fine. Anita continued in a respectful manner. I am sorry, but I think we should end our meeting early. Axion stood up from the chair as he spoke. All right. Axion, while stepping towards Anita, said with genuine kindness, Anita, I would like to invite you to the Archduke's mansion next time. Will you come to see me? Anita, feeling a glimmer of hope amidst her turmoil, still transfixed as Axion's charming personality enveloped her, considered it. My dear is telling me that I can run to him for help. I'll send you an invitation tomorrow afternoon, he promised. In the depths of her mind, she pondered. He's saying to run away from the house that has treated me like a nuisance since Arabella's return. And responded, All right. Anita, who had long felt overshadowed and neglected in her own family, continued pondering. And come to the Lacate Manor, where everyone will welcome me. In the dimly lit dining room, a table was decorated with an array of various foods. Bella sat at the polished wooden chair around the table, her delicate frame barely making a dent in the cushion of the chair. Her father's voice, gentle yet laced with worry, cut through the silence, addressing her. Do you like the food, Bella? A faint smile played on Bella's lips as she nodded softly. Yes, father, it's delicious, she replied, her voice barely audible. Her mother's concern was piercing through the air as she said, Have some more, you're far too skinny. Yet amidst the facade of familial concern, Arabella's thoughts were consumed by Anita, whose silent suffering remained unnoticed. Anita, relegated to the sidelines, picked at her salad, a symbol of her unnoticed presence in the family dynamics. But Arabella reached out with a gentle inquiry. Anita, do you not like steak? All you've been having is a salad. Anita's response was hesitant. She was avoiding Bella's gaze. Oh, are you watching your weight? I don't think there's any need for that. Bella offered her concern, genuine with a smile on her face. Her mother replied amicably. Anita's never been a heavy eater. Her mother's voice, tinged with concern, redirected the focus onto Bella, whose slender frame seemed to amplify the weight of her parents' worry. More importantly, you should be the one eating more. You are all bones, her mother pleaded. Her father added, That's right, you should be worried about yourself. You need to gain some weight. But as their concerns swelled to suffocating proportions, Bella, while fidgeting, apologized. Oh, I'm sorry, I'll have more. But her mother amicably said, Why are you apologizing? You did nothing wrong. Her father added his guilt. We're the ones to blame that we were stuffing ourselves while you starved. Her father gazed at Anita and said, Isn't that right, Anita? Anita paused eating. Her father and mother both wore icy expressions as they glared at her. Her father took up the reins of reprimand, his words echoed with authority and disappointment. I heard all about how you treated Arabella earlier today, he yelled. How could you be so rude to your sister? Your sister suffered while you enjoyed extravagant food and clothing in this house. Arabella flinched at the sight of her father's anger. Her father persisted. You should feel sorry for her. Anita clinked the knife in the salad while wiping her tears. Anita said, While I understand why you two feel bad about the way Arabella grew up, please don't use me as a tool to lessen your guilt. She implored, her words a defiant plea for acknowledgement, a refusal to be a pawn in their game of absolution. Her father furiously yelled, Anita, how dare you say such things in front of your sister? Arabella stuttered nervously, finally unable to bear the weight of their disdain any longer. Anita rose from her seat, her resolve steeling against their taunts. I'll excuse myself so you three can keep playing house, she declared, her voice trembling with suppressed emotion. Her mother's gaze burned with fury as Anita dared to defy their expectations. How dare you? She spat, her words laced with venom. Ignoring her mother's searing glare, Anita turned to leave, her footsteps echoing in the strained silence. But her mother's anger refused to be contained. Hey, sit back down right now, she demanded, her voice rising to a crescendo. Her father's belated call of her name only added to the chaos, a feeble attempt to halt her retreat. "Anita," he shouted. Meanwhile, terrified, Arabella nudged and accidentally dropped the fork from her hand. Anita's mother attempted to rein in her husband's outburst. "Darling, you mustn't yell in front of Arabella, you're scaring her," she implored. The concern in her voice stood in stark juxtaposition to her earlier hostility. While seated, scared Arabella apologized as she reached down to retrieve her fork. "I am sorry." But her father's sudden realization softened his tone as he tenderly addressed her. "Noelle apologized, dear. I wasn't mad at you." Arabella sat on the floor, conversing with her father while the maids cleaned up the spilled food. Her father added, "I was worried that Anita may have hurt your feelings. Pay no mind to what she says, she's always been difficult." Arabella listened to her father carefully. Click-clack, Anita angrily swung open the door, the noise audible in the dining room. At this noise, Arabella just turned and said quietly, "Anita." Arabella's mother, seeking solace for her daughter, whispered to her husband, "Darling, are you really going to let Anita behave like that?" Her husband, with grit, contemplated and ordered a maid. "Tell Anita I need to see her in my office in an hour." Upon hearing her father's directive, Anita mused. "He told me to see him in an hour." While retrieving a book from the bookshelf, she pondered, "But it'll take him at least 2 until he's done fawning over his beloved daughter." While stepping towards the sofa, she said, "I'll just read a book until then." Anita, lost in the pages of a tome chronicling the empire's origins, mused. "This book is about the founding of the empire." As she flipped through its pages, she admitted, "It's not exactly an exciting book, but I like it because it talks about Lake Alkent, recalling its significance." She reflected. Alkent, the spirit animal that aided the first emperor in founding the empire, is supposedly from this lake. Anita amusedly said, "Just thinking about the lake makes me feel better, because it reminds me of who I met there." Suddenly, a vivid flashback emerged. A young girl holding a woman in the lake, the girl carrying the lady out of the water, the girl coughing out and expelling water. The girl wondered at something, a boy with azure eyes, a boy with a captivating demeanor and golden hair. She mused, "Lake Alcante is where I met a boy with eyes bluer than this legendary lake, 8 years ago." Amidst the table adorned with an array of delectable treats, laughter and conversation filled the air. Seated around the opulent table were 2 elegant ladies accompanied by their enchanting young daughters. "Look at all those white flowers!" exclaimed one of the ladies, her gaze drawn to the resplendent flowers adorning the surroundings, was awestruck by the sight. One of the little girls could not contain her wonder. "Oh my!" she exclaimed with a mix of delight and curiosity. Joining in the admiration, the other lady expressed her intrigue. "I wonder what they're called." Among the gathering was 9-year-old Anita Renard, a picture of youthful innocence and curiosity. Observing the scene with a cup of tea in hand, Rachel Savi, the eldest daughter of Count Savi, addressed Lady Renard with a hint of concern. "Miss Renard, you've just been staring at the lake this whole time. You must be bored." Turning her attention from the serene vista of the lake, Lady Renard reassured, "Of course not." Miss Savi, with a pointed glance towards Anita, sought to re-engage her attention. "So you would recall what I was just talking about, wouldn't you?" Caught momentarily off guard, Anita flashed a sheepish smile before swiftly responding. "Indeed I do. The flower you were wondering is called Rabina. It's a flower with a scent as powerful as its beauty." With a polite nod, she added, "I hope that helps." Satisfied with the response, Lady Renard acknowledged, "Yes, well, thank you." As the afternoon tea continued, Anita, her youthful exuberance momentarily subdued, silently pondered, "I wonder how much longer I have to be here." The park adjacent to Lake Alkent was renowned as a favored rendezvous for the aristocracy. Here, young noble ladies often convened for afternoon tea, and today's gathering was no exception. Miss Renard's stern gaze pierced Anita as she scolded her softly. "Though I had a separate reason for coming, that one keeps glaring at you. You should try to befriend her." Adding a touch of assurance, she continued, "They want to be friends with you." Anita, though aware of the truth, tapped her temple and pondered silently. "No way. What they want is to be close to my family." Seated at the table with others, Anita's mind drifted. "This mode of light is a low-level spirit only I can see. I first met it here 2 years ago, recalling the comforting melody it brought. Whenever I'm near Lake Alkent, I can hear its voice." Anita mused. Perhaps it held the magic that could aid her parents in finding her lost sister. To safeguard this possibility, Anita resolved to keep it a secret, feeling a unique connection to the voice. Anita pondered. "I wonder why only I can speak to this. It doesn't seem like anyone else can sense its presence." The voice pierced her thoughts urgently. "Anita, someone fell in the lake." Anita scanned the surroundings, desperation creeping in as no one moved to help. "Is there no one around to help?" As panic set in, she realized there was no time for explanations. "No, there isn't." She started to lose consciousness. "So she needs help immediately." Conflicted, Anita clenched her dress tightly, pondering her options. "Should I ask everyone to go on a walk?" she wondered, only to answer herself. "No. If she's already losing consciousness, there's no way for me to explain how I know that someone is drowning." Unable to articulate the inexplicable voice she heard, Anita remained internal. In that case, Anita, amidst confusion and hesitation, finally made a decision and rose to her feet, all eyes fixated on her, wondering about her next move. "I'm going to take a walk around the lake." As she headed towards the water, a familiar voice echoed, "Over there." Anita swiftly removed her shoes, affirming she already sank below the surface. Placing her shoes delicately on the lakeshore, she urged, "Tried to get people to come here." The voice interrupted once more. "I can't wait. Don't tell me you're..." Anita, propelled by a sense of urgency, moved towards the lake to rescue the person. The voice persisted. Hold on, Anita." Though bewildered, Anita pressed on, determined to aid the person in distress. Ignoring the voice, she leaped into the water. Splash! Anita spotted a lady in the lake and internally exclaimed, "There she is!" Despite her efforts, she struggled to lift the lady out of the water and cried out, "I can't pull her up on my own." Anita waited, hoping for assistance, and wondered how much longer until someone gets here. As fatigue set in, she realized, "At this rate, I might drown too." Then, a sudden sight caught her attention, filling her with hope. "What's that?" A pillar of water. Holding onto the pillar, they both emerged from the water's grasp. Astonished, she marveled. "A mysterious pillar of water saved us." Coughing up water, Anita contemplated the miraculous intervention of the enigmatic pillar. She sat there, still in awe, reminiscing about the miraculous pillar that had left her breathless. "A pillar of water," she uttered softly while refreshing this memory. "It was an unexplainable phenomenon, but I wasn't surprised." As Anita sat by the lakeshore, lost in wonder, a distant voice broke the tranquility. "Your Grace, someone was urging people to make way for Prince Lecary, that is, Archduchess Lecary. Please stand aside." Anita, while reflecting on the lake's profound history, explained, "This lake is part of the founding myth of the Empire, after all." Someone inquired the lady beside her with utmost respect. "Are you all right, Your Grace?" Then, out of the blue, a voice addressed her directly, expressing gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you, miss." Suddenly, Anita was jolted from her thoughts as a charming figure approached her, his presence commanding attention. "I am Axion Lecary," he introduced himself, his blue eyes sparkling. "Thank you for saving my mother." Anita was momentarily taken aback by his charisma but managed to respond. "It was nothing." That was how Axion and Anita met for the first time. "I don't think I told him my name back then." Anita mused, lost in contemplation, as she pondered how Axion had managed to discover her identity and reached out to her. And yet I'm the one expected to sacrifice everything for their benefit. As she descended the stairs, Anita's mind raced with conflicting emotions. The revelation of her parents' discussion regarding Arabella's fate weighed heavily on her. Feeling betrayed and used, she couldn't help but question her father's motives. "I did so much for my family, yet this is how they thank me," she reflected bitterly. Contemplating her father's past actions, she couldn't shake off the feeling of being manipulated. "I am really starting to wonder, why does my father treat me like this without a second thought?" Recalling the day she rescued the Archduchess, Anita questioned herself. "I was the one who rescued the Archduchess that day, so why does he act like this engagement was offered to our household in general?" Fed up with maintaining her obedient facade, Anita contemplated her father's expectations. Does he really believe I will continue to stay obedient and loyal to the family just because I'm his daughter and that's my duty? That makes no sense. Anita's suspicions about her parents' peculiar treatment gnawed at her. Not at her. I look nothing like either of my parents, she concluded, her sense of identity and loyalty shaken to the core. People have always questioned my lineage, especially as I stride over the crimson carpet in the grand mansion. Memories flooded back to Anita of when her sister Arabella's arrival sparked rumors about their lineage. When Arabella returned, the rumors only intensified, triggered by an overheard conversation among the maids. Anita's heart sank as she heard one maid remark to another, "Don't you think it's strange?" Then, correcting herself, she added, Lady Arabella, is the spitting image of her parents, but Lady Anita, it's strange." The other maid speculated. "Who knows, she might not even be noble." Caught eavesdropping, the maid gasped as Anita stared her down, her voice cutting through the air like a whip. "How dare you speak about me like that?" Anita exclaimed. The maid trembled and stammered, pleading for forgiveness. Anita left the room, pondering the doubts people harbored about her rightful place. She couldn't afford to lose everything to Arabella. With empathy for herself, Anita reflected on her engagement and her place in the household, declaring, "I won't let you do this to me. I won't let you use me like this." Standing in the dimly lit chamber, her eyes fixed on the celestial canvas outside, Anita was interrupted by a firm knock. Granting entry, she composed herself as a maid announced the arrival of Sir Elmot of the Lackade Knights. Reflecting on her dynamic with Harriet, her personal maid, Anita pondered whether Harriet's kindness stemmed from her generosity, or merely from the reward she received. Expressing gratitude, Anita commended Harriet's dedication and bestowed a glittering clip upon her as a token of appreciation. Harriet's face lit up with joy as she accepted the gift, whispering to herself about her decision to remain in Lady Anita's service. As she secured the clip in her hair, Harriet contemplated the differences between serving Lady Anita and Lady Arabella, realizing the benefits of remaining with Anita. With a bouquet in hand, she wondered why Lady Arabella, who grew up in poverty, seemed so naive. As she recalled Anita's usual gesture of patting her head, she couldn't help but feel disappointed by its absence. The sound of the door opening startled the man sitting, and Anita entered, radiating joy. Addressing Sir Elmot, she inquired about his well-being. "It's been a while, my lady. How have you been?" Sir Elmot, Vice Commander of the Lackade Knights, responded courteously. Anita remarked on his unexpected visit, holding something out from him. "I had heard you returned from the northern region, but I didn't expect you to come yourself," she said, glancing at the letter. "I expected Axion to send a servant." Turning back to Sir Elmot, she noted, "You're only here to hand me an invitation." With a smile, Sir Elmot explained his volunteering, expressing a desire to see her. Surprised, Anita replied, "How nice of you to say that," as she sat on the sofa. She inquired about his mission in the northern region, to which Sir Elmot responded that it was a small dispute this time. Reflecting on the bitter cold, he admitted his discomfort with the region's climate, notorious for its freezing temperatures and barren soil. Delving into the handling of disputes in the northern region, Sir Elmot explained that normally, it would be the Emperor's duty, but the Archduchy's knights were sent instead. Anita recalled her conversation with Axion about challenging the Emperor's orders, remembering his explanation about searching for something without arousing suspicion. As they discussed, Anita couldn't help but wonder if they were still searching for whatever it was. The delicate clink of the cup punctuated her musings as she expressed her relief that Sir Elmond made it to the capital before winter. However, Sir Elmond revealed he needed to report to the Emperor about what happened in the north. Before he could finish, a thunderous voice from outside interrupted, drawing their attention. Anita's mother demanded to know why she wasn't informed earlier about the guest from the Lackate family. A maid then entered, interrupting, informing Anita that Lady Renard wanted to see her. Anita composed herself, graciously replying, "Tell her to come in." As her mother entered with astonishment tinged with reproach, Anita couldn't help but ponder her facade, pretending as if she hadn't just been informed about the guest. Sir Elmont greeted Lady Renard with a courteous nod, introducing himself as Rick Elmont, Vice Commander of the Lackate Knights. Lady Renard, visibly impressed, exclaimed, "Oh my, the Vice Commander, you say?" as she sat beside Anita on the plush sofa. She marveled at Sir Elmont's visit, expressing disbelief that he had come all the way to deliver an invitation. Sir Elmont, frowning slightly, asserted that it was no trouble at all, emphasizing that anyone from the order would have eagerly accepted the opportunity, especially since it concerned Lady Anita. With a sly smile, Lady Renard countered, expressing surprise at Anita's close association with the Archduchy's knights. Sir Elmond respectfully clarified that it wasn't just the Archduchy knights but everyone from the Lackate house who held Lady Anita in high regard, citing her past act of saving the Archduchess. In a dismissive tone, Lady Anita downplayed her contribution, referring to the event 8 years ago. Lady Renard interjected, suggesting that it was thanks to the doctor, not Anita, that the Archduchess survived. Sir Elmont's glare silenced any further debate, while Lady Renard's gaze fell upon the letter resting on the table, speculating that it must be the invitation. With anticipation, she reached for it, expressing her desire to see what Sir Axion had written. Before she could grasp it, Anita intervened, apologizing to her mother and explaining that she hadn't read it herself yet. She playfully remarked that it would be rude for someone other than the recipient to open it first. Unfolding the letter, Anita noticed its exquisite aroma of roses and found a rose petal inside. She commented on Axion's sweet gesture of including the petal, reading the invitation aloud, which invited her to join him for afternoon tea in the Lackate Manor Gardens in 1 week, expressing his delight to see her, signing off as her friend. With a serene smile, Anita gracefully accepted, instructing Sir Elmont to inform Axion that she would attend. Sir Elmont acknowledged her decision dutifully. Meanwhile, Lady Renard contemplated her plans, deciding to send Arabella with Anita to impress the Archduchess. Expressing concern for Arabella's social skills, Lady Renard addressed Anita, emphasizing the differences in their upbringing. Anita, perceptive to her mother's intentions, internally questioned her desperation to make Arabella Axion's fiancé. Despite her doubts, Anita casually remarked that she didn't mind taking Arabella along, although she wasn't sure if Arabella would enjoy it. Her mother reassured her, and Sir Elmont approved of the idea. Taking leave, Sir Elmont headed to the Imperial Palace, bidding farewell with Lady Renard's reminder to take care of Anita. As the door closed behind him, Lady Renard wasted no time addressing Anita about the maids she had fired without permission. Furious, Lady Renard chastised Anita for firing her personal maid without consulting her. Calmly, Anita explained her reasons, asserting that they couldn't trust maids who badmouthed their masters. Despite Lady Renard's initial anger, Anita's reasoning resonated, and she reluctantly agreed to let it go. Anita echoed her mother's words, questioning the importance of the maid's dismissal compared to other matters. With a smile, Lady Renard revealed her intentions for Anita to accompany Arabella when she meets the Empress in 10 days. She explained that Arabella had never experienced such social situations and would need Anita's guidance to alleviate her anxiety. Anita frowned as she contemplated her parents' schemes. They were planning to offer her as a marriage candidate for the prince instead of Arabella. Imagining the potential consequences for her engagement with Axion, she realized that if the Empress intervened, breaking off her engagement would be simple. This would spare Arabella from marrying the womanizer prince. As Lady Renard rose from the sofa, Anita voiced her concern, suggesting they should ask Her Majesty for permission first. However, Lady Renard dismissed her daughter's query, stating that permission had already been granted and reminding Anita of Arabella's original right to the engagement. She admonished Anita to know her place and stop deluding herself. In the serene tranquility of a garden, a lady engaged in conversation with Axion, broaching the subject of Anita. She inquired if anything had changed in Anita's household since his visit. Axion's response was succinct: everything was the same. Expressing dismay, the lady recalled how Anita had expressed her desire to travel far away once she came of age. Contemplating Anita's situation, she realized that Anita might want to cut ties with her family given how they treated her. Prompted by this realization, she gently asked Anita if she would like to stay with them until she came of age. However, Anita, with unwavering resolve, declined, stating that she couldn't turn her back on her duties. Lost in contemplation, the lady reflected on her failed attempts to help Anita and acknowledged her remorse for not rescuing her. Curious, Axion inquired if she was worried about Anita. Clarifying, burdened by her own sense of guilt, Anita expressed regret. She should have insisted on Anita living with them in the luxurious ambience of her golden-hued room. Meanwhile, Anita savored a cup of tea, adorned in a resplendent maroon and green royal max with a delicate white frill. Amidst her solitude, echoes of her mother's reproach lingered, reminding her of recent scoldings. Anita's mind wandered to the promise of familial unity from the previous day, contrasting it with her family's mercurial decisions. Interrupting her reverie, a gentle knock rapped at her door, prompting her to grant entry. Philip, the Renard family's esteemed butler, conveyed his message that Master Renard wished to see her in his office. Acknowledging his summons, Anita acquiesced, sensing his lingering concern. Philip hesitated, expressing his apprehension about her workload, but Anita reassured him calmly, despite his persistent concern. As Anita entered her father's office, he gestured towards the scattered papers, remarking that she should take care of the paperwork since she was staying at home instead of socializing. Standing before her father, Anita reflected on the situation, realizing that he had been actively preventing her from participating in social events since Arabella's return. Despite her father's reprimands, Anita couldn't help but feel the weight of her early responsibilities and her steadfast commitment to her family's household. Lost in contemplation, Anita observed the scattered papers and lamented that she was merely doing busy work that her parents didn't want to do themselves. Her father's voice cut through her thoughts, demanding an answer, and Anita couldn't resist a playful retort. As her father persisted in his tirade, reminding her of her future as the future Archduke's wife, Anita gently countered, pointing out her mother's lack of involvement in paperwork as the lady of the house. Anita doubted it would be any different with the Lacade family. Her father's frustration peaked as he slammed his hand on the table, yelling that he had had enough of her whining. In a scolding manner, he asserted that at 17, she was old enough to take care of the family's affairs. However, in a rare moment of self-awareness, he muttered, "No, thank you." Determined to make him see reason, Anita responded that unlike him, Axion didn't need help with such matters. Infuriated by her assertion, her father questioned her with quiet resolve, affirming that Axion was intelligent and capable of leading the household. Calmly, Anita stated, "Please do the work meant for the head of the house on your own, father," as she made her way towards the door. Her father's voice echoed furiously behind her, accusing her of acting out because of Arabella's return. When Anita reached the door, she heard her father's final decree to go to her room and reflect on what she had done. Undeterred, Anita retorted that she was just about to. With a resounding slam, she closed the door forcefully behind her, leaving her father seething with indignation. A week later, a carriage arrived, and Anita, adorned in a royal blue gown with a white frill, was lost in her thoughts. Suddenly, her mother appeared, reassuring her and reminding her to cover for Arabella if she happened to faint. Anita inwardly acknowledged the predictability of the situation as both she and Arabella settled into the tanga. As Arabella's nerves got the better of her, she struggled to articulate her thoughts. Anita sensed her hesitation and gently urged her to speak up. Arabella finally expressed her concerns, stating that she didn't agree with their mother's plans and wanted Anita and Lord Axion to be happy. Interrupting her, Anita questioned Arabella's idealistic view of sisterhood, prompting a slight but joyous smile from Arabella. Anita couldn't help but find it unrealistic directing her question to Arabella. "Have you experienced something like that?" Anita asked with a gentle smile. Arabella shared. "There was a family that took care of me in the slums. They should be living comfortably now." Continuing her explanation, she added, "Father said he sent them money as a way to thank them. Isn't that wonderful?" Anita responded skeptically. "Sure, if it were true." Mentally addressing Arabella, Anita thought, "But Arabella, our parents are not that generous." Arabella, clutching her gown, reassured, "Anyway, don't you worry. I have no intention of stealing Lord Axion from you. Trust me." Inquiring further, Anita asked, "Have you ever talked to Mother about this?" Emphasizing her point, she murmured, I need to add it or to your personal maid." Arabella hesitated before replying, "And no." Anita, feeling the throbbing in her head, remarked, "That means you haven't told them you don't want this. These people won't give up even if you object. They're too stubborn." Attempting to make Arabella realize, Anita continued, "How do you expect them to know what you're thinking, Arabella? Telling me your opinion means nothing." As Anita spoke, Arabella's worry intensified, causing her to tightly grip her clothes. When the tanga finally came to a stop, Anita announced, "We have arrived." While Anita disembarked from the carriage, Arabella remained seated, consumed by her concerns. In the serene surroundings of Lackate Manor Gardens, lush greenery and vibrant flowers adorned the landscape, emanating delightful fragrances. The sun's rays glistened upon the flora, accentuating their brilliance. Arabella, captivated by the beauty surrounding her, couldn't contain her exclamation of, "Wow!" Turning to express her joy, she exclaimed, "It's so beautiful!" Approaching her, Axion noticed her delight and remarked, "If I had known the weather would be so lovely, I would have invited you to Lake Alkent." Arabella, brimming with happiness, responded, "This garden is more than enough." As she admired the flowers, she couldn't resist commenting, "These flowers are especially beautiful." Turning to Axion, she politely asked, "May I smell them?" Meanwhile, as Arabella immersed herself in the fragrance of the flowers, she began to feel dizzy. Startled, Anita observed her wobbling figure with concern, struggling to maintain her balance. Arabella managed to utter, "It smells so nice." Axion, with a smile, inquired, "Is that so?" Arabella nodded weakly, affirming, "Why, yes." Observing Arabella's worsening condition, Anita couldn't help but think, "She's turning really pale." Alarmed, she began to voice her concern. "Arabella, are you all right?" Before she could finish, Arabella staggered and collapsed. Anita's voice echoed through the garden as she called out in distress, "Arabella! Arabella!" Reclined on the plush bed within the luxuriously appointed chamber, Arabella stirred as her eyelids fluttered, catching Axion's attention. Upon awakening, Arabella emitted a soft murmur, her consciousness gradually returning. Observing her regaining awareness, Axion gently remarked, "You're awake." Confusion clouded Arabella's mind as she struggled to comprehend the situation. Experiencing discomfort, she winced abruptly, then straightened, her eyes widening in recognition. With a tender tone, Axion inquired, "How are you feeling?" Nervously, Arabella queried, "Where am I? Why am I?" Seeking to reassure her, Axion interjected, "You briefly fainted." Stammering, Arabella expressed concern. "I did?" Axion asked. "Yes, are you feeling better?" Still bewildered, Arabella scanned the room, noticing Anita's absence. "What about Anita? Where did she go?" In response to her inquiry, Axion gently responded, "She went to talk to the doctor about your condition. She'll be back with him soon, so do not worry." She acknowledged, "Oh, I see." The room was filled with silence. Axion was in search of Anita, observing his anticipation for her. Arabella reflected on her mother's remark. Lord Axion seems to have taken a great liking to you. Realizing the lack of connection between them, she contemplated. Mother was mistaken. Gazing at Axion, Arabella continued her musings. His eyes only brim with warmth when he looks at Anita. They only brighten when she is in the room. Restlessly, she dwelled on thoughts of Anita. Anita is a kind person. She may appear cold on the outside. Having a realization, she pondered. This is wrong. I want Anita too. She addressed Axion. Startled by her address, he turned towards her. Arabella slumped and said, I really like Anita. Axion, with his piercing blue eyes fixed, calmly stated. So. Arabella squeezed her hands and replied, I want her to be happy, I swear. I really, really want her to be happy. With a hint of hesitation, Arabella stuttered. It's what I. Interrupting gently, Axion interjected. I feel the same way. Arabella's heart skipped a beat as he continued. I too wish for Anita's happiness over everything else. As Arabella absorbed his words, her mind raced with thoughts. I think, she pondered, her gaze fixed on him. A soft smile graced Arabella's lips as she considered Anita's well-being. He'll be able to make Anita happy, she concluded, her concern for her friend evident in her thoughts. In the grand hall of Arcade Manor, a doctor engaged Anita in a serious conversation regarding Arabella. I suspect Lady Arabella Renard is suffering from sensitivity to divine power, the doctor said. Anita, visibly taken aback, echoed. Divine power? The doctor affirmed with a grave nod. Yes. As he delved into his explanation, he elucidated. It's something that is typically identified early on in life, but it appears she was never made aware of it. For surety, Anita inquired. Are you certain? Explaining the expertise of the doctors within the Archduchy regarding divine knowledge, he elaborated. All the doctors serving the Archduchy are well versed in magic and divine power. As you know, the Imperial family and the Lacate family received divine powers from the spirit animal. Highlighting the significance of such knowledge, he emphasized. Knowledge in such matters is a basic requirement for serving as a doctor here. Reflecting on the ordinary doctor's oversight, Anita mused. That explains why an ordinary doctor wouldn't have noticed her sensitivity. They wouldn't even think to test for it. Contemplating her parents' understanding of the situation, she speculated. Which means our parents definitely wouldn't know. Anita sighed softly, a smile touching her lips as she considered. They must have heard about her fainting by now. I bet they're dying to get her home. Expressing her concerns, Anita inquired. Can she ride in a carriage? The doctor reassured her. Yes, she should be fine after a short break. Upon waking up, Anita swiftly turned to a nearby maid and instructed. Then please prepare the carriage for us. She should be awake by now. Respectfully, the maid responded. Yes, my lady. As Anita made her way towards the room. She paused in the doorway, observing Axion and Arabella engaged in conversation. I feel the same way. Axion's voice carried through the air, with Arabella seated before him, attentive. Continuing, Axion affirmed, I too, before adding over everything else. Witnessing the interaction between them, Anita couldn't help but muse. They look good together. Engulfed in her thoughts, Anita couldn't help but speculate. Even if Arabella hadn't returned, my engagement to Axion was never going to last long. Reflecting on her decision a decade ago, she recalled. 10 years ago, I made the decision to cut ties with the Raynids once I came of age. Seeking solace in her reasoning, she continued. Which means that my engagement to Axion will be broken off anyway. However, a surge of anger overcame her as she realized something, causing her to clench her hands in determination. However, it still rubbed me the wrong way that they were trying to take Axion, my only friend, away from me. I won't let them do that. Lost in thoughts of Axion, she whispered softly. Axion, you'll stay beside me as a friend, even when we are no longer engaged, right? Observing Axion from a distance, Anita contemplated. I believe our relationship won't change. However, walking through the halls of Arcade Manor consumed by self-pity, she lamented. What else would I have left? As they both arrived at Renard Manor, Marquis Renard inquired of Anita. Where is Arabella? Upon entering, Lady Renard replied. I put her to bed in her room. With frustration evident, Marquis Renard slammed his hand down, exclaiming, So! Turning his eye towards Anita, he demanded, Why didn't you do anything, Anita? Anita's response was calm yet firm. What could I have done? Her mother interjected. Excuse me. Undeterred, Anita continued, I'm not a doctor. How was I supposed to prevent Arabella from fainting? Her father, attempting to rationalize, said, Anita, Bella has had a terrible life. Attempting to convey the hardships of Arabella's life, her father began. Unlike you, she grew up in poverty. You've always been selfish, Anita. Her father continued, but this is too much. Anita swiftly interrupted, her voice firm. I could never be as selfish as you. Stunned by Anita's retort, Marquis Renard asked incredulously. What? Anita clarified. I heard that you were too cheap to reward the poor people who raised Arabella in the slums. They glared at her angrily as her father began. You, Anita! Undeterred, Anita interjected. Arabella seems to be under the impression that you sent them money. Her mother's voice rose in protest. Anita! Unyielding, Anita continued. Also, let's make one thing clear. Who is more at fault, mother, for sending Arabella with me when she knew she might faint, or me, for failing to stop her from fainting? Before Anita could finish her sentence, her father's anger boiled over, and he slapped her. Lady Renard intervened, desperately pleading. Darling, don't you remember that Anita has to go to the palace? Lady Renard persisted in making him realize. But you heard what she just said. Anita, reflecting on her mother's attempt to intervene, wondered. I wondered why mother tried to stop him, but then realization dawned on her. But no wonder. Contemplating the document she had stumbled upon a few days prior, she mused. This is why I have no intention of bringing up the document that I found while doing the work that was forced on me a few days ago. Anita pondered further, trying to understand. I won't have anything to do with them in the future anyway. As Lady Renard restrained Marquis Renard, she admonished. You could have punished her once she was back from the palace. Marquis Renard, unable to control his anger, retorted. But she's not showing any sign of remorse. Anita, with a serene smile, addressed her father. Father, I'd look out for yourself first. A concerned maid gently touched Anita's swollen face, remarking. That looks painful. It's really swollen. The bruising might get really bad tomorrow. Suddenly remembering something, the maid's expression brightened. Oh, I heard that bruises go away faster if you hold raw meat against them. Should I bring you some? Mindful of the consequences, Anita replied. What if you get caught by the cook? Sitting on the couch, Anita realized. Don't worry, a ton of medicine will arrive by tomorrow morning. The maid hesitantly inquired. By the way, my lady, did Lady Arabella really just faint out of nowhere? Expressing her concern, she added. It's worrying to hear that she fainted for no reason. Recalling the reason behind Arabella's fainting spell, Anita had a flashback to when she asked Axion, Did you do something to the flowers? Axion confessed. I needed to check something, so I blessed them with divine power, though I had no idea it would make Lady Arabella faint. Turning towards Anita, he addressed her. Anita. Anita then looked at him intently, inquiring, Are you disappointed in me? After some time, Anita thinks, I wonder what you would have said if I told you I was disappointed in you. Would you have just smiled? Axion. What are you afraid of? Meanwhile, she recalls a moment from her childhood. The servants were finding her in gardens, and she was hiding behind some plants. The servant shouts, My lady. Where are you, Lady Anita? A servant said, She's not here. Let's look somewhere else. Meanwhile, baby Anita thinks, What am I doing? Everyone is so kind and sweet to me. They're so much nicer than anyone at Renero Manor. But I feel like I don't deserve their kindness. Father sent me here so our families could grow closer. I know I shouldn't be acting like this, but it's suffocating. I feel like I can't breathe. Meanwhile, baby Axion finds her and said, "There you are." Seeing him, she thinks, "Axion?" He said, "I've been looking for you." She asked, "Why?" She asked him, "Don't you hate me?" She thinks, "After the day I rescued the Archduchess from Lake Alkenti, the two of us never had a chance to talk. I was so used to being hated that I didn't really mind. There are more people who hate me than people who like me, after all." He comes close to her saying, "I don't hate you." He said, "Anita, there's no way I could hate you." He moves his hand towards her saying, "Let's go." Anita thinks, that was the first time someone reached out to me like that. That's why I didn't notice that in that moment. Axion's eyes were filled with desperation. A few days later, the servants were in hurry holding different items containing water. Ella, the maid at the Lacade Manor, said to Your Grace, "I'll watch over him tonight. Please go and rest, Your Grace." She replied, "I'm fine. You should go and rest, though." She said, "This happens every summer, so I should be used to it by now, but I can't help feeling bad for him." She turns and asked Ella, "Oh, has Anita gone to sleep?" Ella replied, "Yes, I took her to her room." Ella said, "Your Grace? I noticed this when I was helping Lady Anita change, but she had several bruises on her side like she was pinched. There were some wounds that looked older as well." She asked Ella, "Wounds?" Ella replied, "Yes." "What should I do? Should I use holy water to heal them to prevent scarring?" She said, "Yes, go ahead. You can get holy water from the temple in the morning." Ella said, "Yes, Your Grace." I wondered why Lady Anita refused help with getting dressed. I thought she might have been too shy, but it makes sense now. Who could have done that to her? She said, "I heard that, a week ago, the Renard family wanted to test the parentage of a girl and asked for the Imperial Palace's holy relic. I wonder." Meanwhile, she thinks, it's not as if the holy relic is sure to work. There is no way of knowing. But those wounds, they were most likely caused by the girl claiming to be Arabella. If this girl has something to do with Anita's wounds, I should let the Renard family know. Meanwhile, a servant comes and said, "Your Grace, you're needed in your office." She raised, saying, "All right." She walks through the door and notices Anita standing there. Seeing her, she said, "Anita?" She crouched and asked, "What is it?" Anita replied, "I came because I saw the doctor hurry over here. I'm sorry if I'm being nosy." She replied, "Not at all. You must have been worried about Axion. It's nothing to worry about. He tends to get sick like this at times, you see." She said, "But you have to keep it a secret. The successor of the Archduchy has many enemies, so his weaknesses can't be revealed." Anita replied, "I won't tell anyone." She asked Anita, "By the way, Anita, I heard that you had some wounds. Are you all right?" Anita replied, "Oh, I didn't mention them because they're nothing to worry about." Hearing this, she thinks, I suppose that means that the Renards know about them, too. That's a relief to hear, but seeing that there are also some old wounds, Anita must have kept those a secret from her parents. She squeezed Anita's hand, saying, "Anita, it's best to tell others about any pain you go through. And if you like, you can visit more often and stay longer." Anita said, "Thank you, but I don't think that's possible." Anita said, "I heard the children of farmers start tilling the soil when they turn 10, and I'm 10 years old now. That means I must study as much as possible to help Father with his work. I need to be able to deal with things like this on my own." Hearing this, she asked Anita, "Did your father tell you that?" Anita replied, "Yes." She said, "I see." She smiled and said, "Anita, could you stay by Axion's bedside for a bit? I need to go and take care of something for a moment." Anita replied, "Okay, I will." She said to Anita while brushing her hairs with her hand, "You're very kind." Hearing this, Anita thinks, kind. Anita went to Axion's room, and while touching his hand, she thinks, "Axion, your hand is cold. It was so warm earlier. While holding his hand, she thinks about what your grace said to her, "You're very kind." She thinks, what a strange thing to say. Everything I know about kindness comes from staying here. I wish I could have Axion's nightmares for him. I'm used to them, after all. I can handle them better. Meanwhile, she fell asleep and he wakes up. He give her the blanket and she asked in sleep, "Are you having nightmares?" Axion said, "I'll have them instead," and Axion used his powers. And said, "So you can have nice dreams?" He squeezed her hand saying, "Do you remember, Anita? The day we first met. I keep thinking about that day." He said, "And I'm really glad that you managed to come back from that lake." This empire was founded by the first emperor, who received divine power from a spirit animal, and 2 archduchies were formed. One archduchy was given to the emperor's sibling as a title, and his children received the title of count. And the other is the Lacade Archduchy, which originated from the first emperor's second son and has been passed down ever since. However, the empire's actual truth differs from the well-known founding myth. The spirit animal known to have helped the first emperor actually put a terrible curse on the imperial family, and anyone who falls into Lake Alkenti, the source of the curse, drowns in its waters. The imperial family placed knights around the lake to prevent further deaths and maintain its divine reputation. Despite their efforts, people still drowned in the lake, proving its inescapability. But that's where Anita didn't know about the lake's curse, as it was a truth only the imperial family was aware of. It was probably why she has no idea how amazing it was that she survived. A man said, "Hurry! We must check on Her Grace's condition. Those who don't have divine power have no chance of surviving the lake, so the fact that Anita didn't drown is nothing short of a miracle." I wondered whether the lake's spirit animal had perhaps saved Anita. "Your Grace. Your Grace. Are you all right?" But it didn't matter. Anita had saved the Archduchess, and so I was going to treat her as our family's savior. At some point, I found myself unable to take my eyes off of her. I was the only person born with divine powers in an era where none but healing exists, and the Emperor is always waiting for the right moment to strike me down, while the Holy Temple is ready to strike him down. That's why I've always felt out of place and different. The kind people of the Archduchy have no way of knowing, of course. I felt like an anomaly that didn't fit in anywhere. And somehow, Anita also appeared to be the same. She always looked so lonely. Whenever I look at her, it hurts right here. If she had divine powers, too, we'd be able to relate to each other. "My lady! Where are you, Lady Anita?" Then, on the day I thought I had lost you, I realized something. It didn't matter at all that you didn't have divine powers. He said, "At first I wished that you were like me and had divine powers, but now I'm glad you don't. Because that means you won't suffer through the things I did." "So Anita, don't you hate me?" "There's no way I could hate you. I can't do anything that would make you sad. That's why I can't ask you about certain things. Like why you barely eat anything, or why you don't have a single maid accompany you when you come to visit your fiancé. And whether you're genuinely happy." Coming back to present, the maid said to Anita, "Your cheek is really swollen. Also, the Marquis said that you mustn't go anywhere for the time being. However, he sent for so much medicine right away, so he must be worried." Seeing the mirror, she thinks, "Yeah, right. He's just afraid of anyone seeing me like this." The servant said, "But it looks like the bruising will go away quickly. Isn't that great?" Anita said, "It is." Servant said, "Oh, we also got some holy water from the temple today." Anita asked, "Is that so?" Anita, giving a coin to her, said, "Here." The servant asked, "Why?" Seeing her, Anita thinks, "Does she want more?" She gives her more coins, saying, "Good work, Harriet." She replied, "Thank you." The servant said, "I'll go and prepare breakfast then. I'll come to get you later, Lady Anita." Anita said, "All right." Anita, noticing a strange feeling, stops and thinks, seeing the window, "What is this strange feeling? It's like I had a dream I can't remember." There was something nostalgic about it. Meanwhile, Axion standing next to window lost in his thoughts. He recalls a moment when Anita said to her, "I have a secret. It's something I can't tell anyone, not even you. So it's all right for you to keep one secret from me." Axion said, "Okay, let's tell each other everything other than that one secret then." Anita said, "Okay." Axion thinks, one of the secrets Anita told me about is that she can talk to spirits, even though she doesn't have divine powers. Does that mean her sister is the same? Meanwhile, someone knocks at the door. Axion said, "Come in." Two servants of him comes inside and one said, "Lord Axion." Axion asked them, "What did you find out?" The servant replied, "I've prepared a report. First of all, I will begin with what we've discovered about Arabella Renard." He said, "According to the doctor, it is likely that Arabella Renard is overly sensitive to divine power." Axion asked him, "Does she have divine power herself?" He replied, "No." Axion thinks, she won't be any use to the imperial family then, which means I won't have to stop them if they want her to marry the prince. He asked him, "Who will be leading the Saints' Day ceremony this year?" He replied, "It will be Count Rom's second son for now, but I don't believe the Renards will stay still and watch that happen. The Marchioness plans to introduce Arabella to high society that day, so I'm sure she's eager for Arabella to take the spotlight by leading the ceremony." Saints' Day. The Empire, founded with the aid of a spirit animal, holds a sacred ceremony every 3 years. The children of each noble family take turns leading this ceremony. But the imperial family has an ulterior motive for holding it. The real purpose of this ceremony is to find anyone with divine powers and monitor whether someone outside of the imperial family's lineage has such powers. The man said, "This year's ceremony is especially important to the Renards." The man behind him said, "Every time the ceremony was held in the past, they refused to participate, saying that they wouldn't send their second child to it when their first child hadn't had the chance." He said, "Now that their first daughter is back, they will definitely participate." Axion asked him, "Is there any chance of Arabella fainting during the ceremony?" He replied, "Unless someone gets hurt and needs to be healed by one of the priests, the chance of her fainting is low. However, if that does happen, people may find out about her sensitivity." The man behind him said, "Then, the imperial family will want her to marry the prince to use her to detect divine powers." He said, "I'm sure the Renards will be terrified that they might get massacred like the Empress's family." Axion recalls Arabella's words, "I want her to be happy." He thinks, Anita rarely lets people get close to her. Seeing that she barely acknowledges her sister, I'm sure the two of them aren't close. Thus, the fact that Arabella said that despite not being close might mean that she genuinely cares about Anita. The man asked, "Lord Axion? What are you thinking about?" Axion replied, "Vance." He gets confused and asked, "Yes, my lord?" Axion said, "I've decided to participate in this year's Saints' Day ceremony." On the other hand, Anita was lost in her thoughts seeing some papers. They keep giving me work even though I'm locked in here. She thinks, has he still not checked this document himself? Or maybe he didn't realize it got mixed in with the other paperwork. She thinks, it's evidence of tax evasion. It was exactly 1 year ago when I started noticing something was off. The Renards have been making donations to the temple every year. But the donation amount didn't match last year, and a large sum of money was unaccounted for. I was confused, so I went to see the Marquis myself, but... Know your place. This is none of your business. He was hiding something. There was no doubt he was keeping a separate ledger, but after I questioned him, the Marquis made sure to do the bookkeeping himself, and he didn't let me see any of it. Until now, that is. Now the evidence is in my hands once more. The reason the Renards have been secretly donating such huge amounts of money to the temple must be because of the Torch of Ariadne, a holy relic that can locate anyone, no matter where they are. That must be how they found Arabella. Seeing the paper, she said, "For more months until the periodical tax audit, She thinks the Marquis's tax evasion will definitely be uncovered this time, and the Imperial Palace won't turn a blind eye to it. She drops the papers saying, despite that, I have no intention of fixing this for them. They won't be able to raise taxes in the territory to pay their fines anyway. They can only pay those fines using their private property. Good. That means the residents of the Renard family's territory won't be affected by any of this for the next 10 years. Of course, the Marquis and Marchioness will be made destitute and unable to afford their staff. But that's none of my concern. A few days later, seeing Arabella in an elegant dress, her father said, Goodness. You look beautiful, Bella. It's as if that dress was made to be worn by you. Bella replied, It's thanks to everyone helping me look nice. Her father said, Bella, you remember everything we told you earlier, don't you? He said, You have to be especially mindful of the way you present yourself in front of the Empress. She replied, Yes, father. Arabella and her mother comes downstairs. Bella noticed Anita and said, Oh, Anita! She rushed towards her saying, You got done sooner than I did. You look so pretty. Anita replied, Sure. She thinks, It's obvious they put in so much effort to make me look nice so the Empress would notice me. Her mother said, Anita, you need to put on some more powder. Bella said, She looks great already though. Anita's skin is so clear and bright to begin with. Her mother said, We all need to look our best for the Empress. Anita's servant comes and said, Please follow me, my lady, but Anita said, No. I'm fine. Anita said, I am ready to go, so there's no need to wait any longer. Let's go, Arabella. Her mother gets shocked and shouts, Hold on. Anita smirks and thinks, Why are you so nervous? Maybe you shouldn't have done something you need to hide, father. Her father said, I have something to discuss with you, Anita. Come with me. Anita said, I don't know what this is about, but I have nothing to discuss with you, father. Anita said, Oh? Don't tell me. Is this about my cheek? Hearing this, her father shouts, Anita. Arabella asked her father, What's wrong, father? Why would you shout at me? Meanwhile, her mother said, Don't mind them, Bella. Bella said, But. Her mother said, Stop scaring Bella and follow me. Anita said, Like I said, I have nothing to discuss with you, father. Her father said, You little. The servant starts whispering, It's Lady Anita again. She's making everyone uncomfortable. Maybe she's doing it on purpose to scare Lady Bella. I bet she's doing this out of spite because Lady Bella's dress is prettier. Bella said, Father is the one who started it. Anita isn't to blame. The servant aide, You are so kind, Lady Bella. If only Lady Anita was half as sweet as you. Bella thinks, It doesn't make sense. I know Anita is a kind person. However, whenever I say so, everyone tells me she's not. Our loving parents, the kind maids, everyone at Renard Manor says the same thing. If Anita really was as terrible as they say, she never would have run to get a doctor when I fainted. And the butler told me that Anita saved the Archduchess from drowning when she was only 9 years old. So why does everyone say that Anita is a bad person even though she always helps people? Her mother said, Arabella, go and get in the carriage. We have to talk to Anita first. Bella holds Anita's hand and said, No. Their parents get shocked and her mother asked, Bella? Bella asked, Is it something you don't want me to hear? Hearing her words, Anita gets shocked. Her mother said, We just think you should go and sit in the carriage to rest your feet. Seeing her, Anita thinks, Why are you doing this, Arabella? She thinks, Don't tell me you. No, of course not. In the end, she's just like our parents. Her mother said, That's not what we just. Her father said, We're just worried that you'll tire yourself out before you even get to meet the Empress. You get exhausted so easily, Bella. Her mother said, So why don't you leave Anita behind for a moment and get in the carriage? She interrupts her saying, No. Bella comes in front of Anita saying, We can't be late meeting the Empress. We should get going. Arabella turns and said, "Let's go, Anita." Arabella grabs Anita's hand and starts moving. Anita was completely shocked and confused. She thinks, how strange. While entering in the carriage, her mother said to Arabella, "This is how you greet Her Majesty, Arabella." Meanwhile, Anita, seeing the boy helping them to enter the carriage, thinks, he seems disgusted by the mere thought of coming in contact with me. But he's not one of our usual knights. Where have I seen him before? Right. He was one of the knights who brought Arabella back from the slums. The knight asked, "What are you waiting for?" She thinks, he must be a newer recruit if he's never guarded US before, so why did he get assigned to US? The knight said, "Hurry up. Will you?" She thinks, something's off about this. Anita hits his hand and then hits on his foot, and he shouts out of pain. He glares at him saying, "You should have taken my hand if you can't." Even Anita interrupts him saying, "Hey," she said, "recite the knight's code of chivalry for me." He asked, "Why would I do that?" She glowers at him saying, "Because you don't seem to know it. I can't believe a knight of the Renard family lacks such basic knowledge." The knight said, "Well, I can't believe someone like you is part of the Renard family." She asked, "What do you mean?" He replied, "You torment Lady Arabella and—" Meanwhile, Anita's mother turns and shouts, interrupting him, "How dare you speak to Anita like that?" Anita gives a cold look to her mother. Her mother gets scared and said, "Anita?" She said, "It wasn't me. Trust me." Meanwhile, Anita thinks, judging by her reaction, I was right. For whatever reason, Mother has been spreading false rumors about me on purpose and is trying to hide her involvement. She thinks, I suppose I'll have to find out why she did this. She smiled and said, "Of course, Mother." She said, "I believe you." While moving forward, Anita said, "How strange, though. Why would a knight who has never even met me act like that?" She turns and said, "Oh, those maids I fired the other day must have been spreading rumors." Her mother said, "Yes, that must be it." Anita said, "I'm glad I fired them, then." Her mother nodded her head saying, "Yes, I am, too." Anita said, or maybe instead of focusing on his training, he was busy listening in on conversations at the manor. Seeing the knight, she thinks, it's not unusual for someone to hate me, but to be so obvious about it. She thinks, it feels different from the hate I'm used to. Anita said, "Mother, I never want to see that knight's face ever again. Father will agree to ban him from guard duty when he hears about this, won't he?" Her mother replied, "Oh, of course he will. Should we send him back to our territory?" Anita smiled and said, "No, that would be too much." She turns while saying, "Let's go inside to see Her Majesty." They went to Her Majesty and a servant announced them, "Your Majesty, Marchioness Renard is here with her oldest daughter and her youngest daughter." Her Majesty said, "Let them in." They went inside and Anita, showing respect, said, "Greetings, Your Majesty." Arabella bowed and said, "Greetings, Your Majesty. And my name is Arabella Renard." Seeing her, Anita thinks, is she nervous? I guess that makes sense. Her Majesty said, "Raise your heads." The Empress is known for her lack of expression and cold demeanor. Although her whole family was tragically destroyed, she never let it affect her. Even when people mock her with rumors about how she never smiles for fear of wrinkles, she never bats a single eyelash. Anita thinks Arabella has never seen the Empress, so no wonder she's nervous. Her Majesty said, "I finally get to meet you." Hearing this, Arabella gets confused. Her Majesty said, "Would Marchioness Renard and her youngest daughter step outside for a moment?" Her mother gets confused and said, "Your Majesty, Arabella is still not used to." Her Majesty asked, interrupting her, "Is your eldest daughter not 19 years old now? Is she still too immature to speak without someone at her side?" Her mother bowed and said, "I apologize, Your Majesty. That is not what I meant." The Empress said, "Then mind your words next time. Why are you still here? I told you all to leave except Arabella Renard." Anita and her mother waits outside and Anita raised from her chair and her mother asked her, "Where do you think you're going?" The Empress may want to see you. She turns asking, why would she want to see me when she's busy with Arabella? Her mother said, you never know, so stay put. Anita said, no. Her mother shouts, Anita. Anita said, I'm sure a maid will come get me if Her Majesty wants to see me. Her mother said, still, you need to stay here so you're ready to. Anita turns and glares at her mother and asked, what? Are you that eager to offer me as a marriage candidate for the prince? Her mother starts sweating and asked, what are you talking about? Anita said, if not, I can't understand why you're being so touchy. Meanwhile, Anita thinks, the only reason I am so confident is because I know for a fact that the Empress would never call for me. There is a certain animosity between the Empress and Archduchess Lacade, after all. Her mother shouts, you must return at once when a maid comes to get you. Do you understand? Hearing this, Anita turns and glares at her mother. She came outside in the garden. Standing there, she thinks, I don't feel like taking a walk, but I might as well. She thinks, I wonder what the Empress is telling Arabella right now. It felt like she was waiting for her from the start. I thought she talked to me about marrying the prince, so this is unexpected. Even the Marchioness was surprised. It seemed she expected the Empress to speak with her rather than Arabella. Meanwhile, she noticed something, and turns to see. A boy comes from bushes. Seeing the boy, Anita thinks, is something wrong with his eyes? Why is he out here all by himself? Meanwhile, he staggers, and Anita grabs him. The boy said to her, thank you. The boy squeezed her arm, and Anita thinks, should I tell him to let go of me so I can help him? The boy lifts his hand saying, I'm sorry. The boy hesitates, and Anita thinks, why is he just standing there? Does he have something to say to me? The boy turns and rushes to opposite side. Anita gets confused. On the other hand, Axion and his 2 servants stands in palace. A servant said, according to a servant, His Highness is not in his room. He said this isn't the first time he's been late to a meeting with you, but isn't this too much? The other servant said, also, I heard that the oldest daughter of the Renard family is here to finally greet Her Majesty. Axion said, right, I forgot about that. He thinks, the torch of Ariadne is a holy relic that confirms a person's parentage. This holy relic is said to belong to a mysterious individual. The Renards were only able to get their hands on it to find Arabella, thanks to the Empress. Axion said, it's been a whole month since they found their oldest daughter. The Empress must not be happy that it took them so long to bring her here. The servant said, that probably means Lady Anita is here too. Axion smiled and sighed, you're right. First servant said, my lord, the prince is making you wait for far too long. The other said, considering his long absence, perhaps the Empress called for him. The first servant said, that means you might have a chance to run into Lady Anita. Hearing this, he turns and starts moving. They asked him, where are you going, my lord? His Highness might be back soon. He turns and smiled while saying, I won't be gone for long. Meanwhile, he noticed Anita standing there. Seeing her, he said, Anita? Anita asked him, what brings you to the Imperial Palace, Lord Axion? He grabs her hand saying, I'm here to see the prince. What about you? Anita said, I'm here with Arabella for an audience with Her Majesty. A maid might come get me at any moment. Axion asked, did you happen to run into the prince? Anita laughed and replied, No. Axion said, I see. Anita said, if you're looking for His Highness, I could help you. Axion smiled and said, no, it's fine. Meanwhile, he noticed her face. He asked her, Anita. Touching her face, he asked in a cold tone, who did this to you? Axion thinks, Anita, I felt relieved as soon as I saw you. I think I was nervous I might have found you with the prince. I believe we were friends this whole time, but it was strange. It feels like I've always liked you. Anita asked him, what do you mean? He smiled and replied, I meant, who made you wait here? Is it the maid taking you to see the Empress? Anita replied, oh, No, I'm just here on my own. He squeezed her hand, saying, Then I'll take you there. She replied, No, it's fine. It's not far. He glares and grabs her hand. He thinks, I'm sure the Marquis and Marchioness are to blame for that bruise. Until you leave the Renard family for good, I'll hold myself back. Anita comes back and sits in front of her mother. Anita, seeing her mother, thinks, I guess the Empress isn't interested in seeing the Marchioness. Meanwhile, the door opens and Arabella comes outside. Seeing Anita, Arabella said, Anita. But her mother interrupts her, shouting, Arabella. Her mother hugged her, asking, Are you all right? She asked her, Did the Empress not call for me? Bella replied, No, she said we may leave now. Her mother replied, I see. Let's go home then. They were ready to leave, but suddenly her mother said, One moment. I would like to turn back and see Her Majesty. The servant said, You will have to return another day too. Her mother with anger said, I'm already here. Why can't I just see her? Seeing her, Anita thinks, she seems embarrassed having to ask a maid for a favor. I guess she knows that she has to see the Empress now for her plan to work. What possessed her to push back this meeting for a whole month, anyway? The Empress even lent her and the Marquis the torch of Ariadne. Suddenly she thinks, Don't tell me. She recalls her father's words, We've already made the most of her engagement. The Archduchess helped them. How dare they try and break off my engagement to Axion when the Archduchess helped them find Arabella? How much lower are they willing to stoop? Her mother shouts, Take me to her now. The servant starts sweating and said, But. Bella grabs her arm, saying, Please, mother. You're making her uncomfortable. Her mother shouts, Arabella. You are a Renard. A Renard doesn't have to accommodate any servant. Her mother turns and said, Let's just go, Arabella. Bella rushed towards her mother, saying, Mother. Bella said to her mother while reading the carriage, Her Majesty wouldn't have been happy with an unannounced visit. Her mother said, You're right. Anita, seeing her, paused and said, Arabella? Arabella turns towards her, HM? Meanwhile, at night, Arabella comes to Anita's room and said, I'm glad you're still awake. She asked her, Can I sleep with you here tonight, Anita? Bella hesitantly asked her, Would you like to sleep together? Anita replied, Sure. Anita, showing her bed to Bella, said to her, Sit down. She sit down on the bed and Anita grabs her face. She rubs a scratch on Bella's face. Bella asked her, You knew? Anita replied, I did. Anita asked her, Did Her Majesty slap you across the face? Bella said, Her Majesty is a good person. But I must have displeased her with the way I spoke. Anita turns hearing this and asked, What did you even say? She replied, Anita, this time I wasn't just all talk. She said, losing a finger. I value you far more than that, Anita. Bella said to the Empress, Anita and Lord Axion will never break off their engagement. The Empress slapped her and asked, Even if I were to cut off one of your fingers? Bella fell asleep and Anita lost in her thoughts. Anita thinks, How surprising. She finally fell asleep once I told her that even the Empress could never cut off a noble lady's finger. It must have been a relief to hear. She's such a scaredy cat, and yet she tries to defy the Empress. Arabella, you're so strange. The next day, Axion met Khalid, the Empire's one and only prince. Khalid asked him, So you just left yesterday? Axion said, You failed to show up first, Your Highness. Khalid replied, Yes, but you should have waited for me. Come on. Khalid said, Oh, by the way, I heard that your fiancé met with my mother yesterday too. Khalid thinks, HM? I expected him to look bored like he always does. Seeing him, he thinks, What a surprise. He smiled while thinking, then again, he was like this when we were at school too. Axion, who found even me annoying, didn't push away people trying to befriend him. I assumed it was because he was interested in making useful connections. However, in the end, it was all for Anita Renard. He said, I can't believe you wanted to find friends for Lady Anita. He said, what if she had become better friends with them than you? Axion replied, that would have never happened. Khaled asked him, how do you know? Were you planning on getting in the way if they got too close? Axion smiled and replied, why would I? It's impossible for anyone to get as close to Anita as I have. Khaled asked, is that so? Axion gives him a JWL. He takes it and said, thank you again. He said, I'm actually able to see the light when it's sunny outside now. He asked Axion, by the way, how is Her Grace, your mother? For a long time, no one in the Empire was born with proper divine powers. However, one day, the Archduchess gave birth to a successor with divine powers. For 10 years, the Emperor did nothing, until he finally put into action a plan to eradicate the Archduchess. His plan was to make Axion despise his powers. Khaled said, my mother still regrets letting His Majesty fool her into luring Her Grace into the lake. Axion said, I'll let my mother know. Khaled smiled and said, also, please let her know that the future Emperor will remember that progress was made thanks to Her Grace asking you to help. Meanwhile, Anita comes and gardens. She thinks, I'm sure it will be happy to see me, even though I'm just here to ask a question. A light comes and voice echoes from it, Anita! 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 She turns and thinks, I knew it. The voice comes, it's been a whole month. I thought you'd forgotten about me. Why haven't you come to see me? I've never had to wait longer than 10 days to see you. She replied, I've been busy. The voice comes, what are you thinking about right now? Anita asked it, can you fix someone's sensitivity to divine power? The voice comes, that would be difficult. They just have to avoid going to the temple. But all they can do is heal, so maybe it's okay. Why? Do you know someone like that? Anita asked it, how did you know? The voice says, we've had a lot of conversations, so I figured. Plus, I'm a great spirit, after all. Anita asked, what's with that tone? The voice says, I didn't have anyone to talk to for a whole month, so I forgot how to talk naturally, okay? Anita replied, I'm sorry you had to wait so long. It asked, so you'll come see me again, right? Anita replied, I can't promise anything, so don't wait for me. It said, you're so cold, Anita. But I know that's how you show kindness. Anyway, I'm so glad I met you, Anita. I really want to tell you my name someday. Anita thinks while leaving, I guess there'll be gossip about me being at the lake by myself. Meanwhile, someone said, Lady Anita Renard? Anita turns and saw a girl holding a hand fan. The girl said, it's been a while. Seeing the girl, Anita tries to remember her and thinks, Lady Rachel Savi? There was a rumor that Count Savi loved his second wife so much that he treated his stepdaughter better than his own daughter. Although she was only the daughter of a count, Rachel had social skills that kept her well connected. However, whenever she was with me, she dropped her perfect facade. One time, I asked her, Lady Savi, do you consider me your friend? A friend is someone you can be your true self in front of. It was because of something I read in a book, but... Excuse me? It made Rachel very angry. Of course not. It would be best for you not to be so arrogant. All right. Even after that, I could never figure out why she was always so irritable around me. Rachel asked her, did the Renards stop supporting you? She said, your outfit is just so simple. Anita turns without any response. Rachel grabs her arm. She said, wait. Rachel said, oh my, really? She said, I'm sorry, I have something to discuss with my friend. The ladies standing behind them asked, who is your friend? Lady Rachel, noticing Anita, she said, oh. Go ahead. Rachel holds Anita's arm and squeezes it. Rachel said, let's keep walking with our arms linked, Lady Anita. Rachel smiled and said, I feel like flaunting our relationship right now. You see, I didn't like those young ladies one bit. While walking, Rachel asked her, why don't I buy you a dress to thank you? Anita replied, no, thank you. I have somewhere to be. Rachel asked her, but where are your knights and maids? And what about your carriage? Anita replied, I don't feel like answering that. Rachel said, since it doesn't seem like you'll ever come to see me, I'll settle my debt right now. Rachel said Grand Marchioness Euclid knew about the Renard family's oldest daughter. Anita said, it's something every noble knew about, so there's no doubt she would have known as well. She's the older sister of Marquis Renard, after all. Rachel said the Saint's Day Eve ball will be held soon. Maybe I'll see you there? Hearing this, Anita thinks, it sounds like she is implying the Grand Marchioness knew something else. Is she trying to warn me about something? After some time, a servant follows Anita and she turns asking what it is. He replied, the Marchioness was asking about your whereabouts. Where were you today, my lady? Anita keeps moving, saying, Lake Alkenti. Bella comes and said, you're home late, Anita? She asked her, where have you been? Anita asked her, why do you ask? Arabella hesitate while saying, and for no reason. I was just a little worried. Anita thinks, don't be curious about where I've been, Arabella. I went to the slums where you used to live to see your parents and your injured sister. I wanted to compensate them with my own money. Because based on his ledger, I knew that the Marquis had no intention of giving them any money. One of the Renard knights pushed your sister for calling you by your old name, and she even broke her leg. Despite all that, however, is Lady Arabella doing well? Your mother still loves you. I've never been loved like that. Out of pity for your old family, I can't tell you where I've been today, Arabella. Anita said, why would you be worried? Bella said, huh? Anita, I really didn't mean anything by it. I just have something I want to do with you, but you seem so busy. She squeezed her dress, saying, it'll be Saint's Day soon. It might be too late to get a dress made, but there's still jewelry. Anita turns and said, fine. If you're implying that you want to go shopping. Bella said, why yes, I am. The next day, Anita Axion comes and asked Anita, how was the journey here? She replied, it was fine. She thinks, it's already been 7 years having afternoon tea with the Archduchess a couple of times a month. Axion asked her, when will you ride your carriage all the way to the front doors of Lacade Manor? She thinks, Her Grace might have given me permission, but that's only because I'm engaged to her son. It's a privilege I was only given because I'm your fiancé. Anita said, oh right, Arabella is fine now. She fainted the last time, remember? Axion said, oh. He smiled and said, I'm glad to hear that. Anita said, the doctor must have told you as much, but it wasn't anything contagious, so don't worry. You must have been shocked. I'm sorry I didn't let you know earlier. Meanwhile, Axion comes close to her, saying, what about you? Anita turns, asking, me? Axion said, yes, you, Anita. He asked her, are you all right? Anita gets confused and asked, why do you ask? She asked him, do I not look all right to you? Anita said, I'm fine. I've never been sick. Meanwhile, someone shouts, Lord Axion. Seeing a boy and a girl, Anita thinks, Madame Grace, the head maid and Axion's aide? Anita smiled and said, you don't need to stay with me, Axion. It looks like Madame Grace is here to take me to the Archduchess. Axion said, don't give in so easily, Anita. He said, what must I do so you will act the way you want to? He asked her, also, may I escort you to the Saint's Day Eve ball? Hearing this, she gets confused and thinks, why is he asking me this so suddenly? Although there are less than 3 months until I leave the Renards, this still remains true. She blushed and said, you are the only person I want as my escort to any balls I attend. A servant asked Anita, have you been well, my lady? Anita replied, I have. The servant said, oh, your birthday is coming up. Isn't it? Is there anything you might like? Meanwhile, a servant comes shouting, Madame Grace. Madame Grace asked her, Ella? Why are you shouting? The servant said, I have an urgent message for you. Madame Grace bowed and said to Anita, I apologize, my lady. Anita asked her, What is it? She said, It seems I have forgotten that Her Grace told me she would not have time for tea today. Hearing this, Anita gets shocked and asked, Her Grace said that? Anita said, I understand. Meanwhile, she thinks, is it a political issue? Arabella is the one who will become head of the family, after all. Suddenly she recalls Axion's words, Don't give in so easily, Anita. She thinks I understand that, but I want to hear it for myself. Meanwhile, Anita moves towards Archduchess's room and the servant shouts, Wait, my lady. She grabs the door handles. She enters the room. Seeing her, Archduchess said, Anita? Anita sits next to her and said, Please forgive my rudeness. She smiled and said, It's all right. Meanwhile, she coughed, and Anita found out that she is ill. Anita asked her, How long has it been? And what is the disease called? She chuckled and said, Nothing gets past you, does it? She said, The doctors are not sure either. Anita asked, What about His Holiness or His Majesty? Suddenly Anita thinks, Oh no, how dare I ask such a thing? Both of them are eager for Her Grace to die. The temple would jump at the chance to step in as Axion's guardian, since he has divine powers. And the Emperor has always been wary of the Lacade family. She said, It's all right. You saved me from the lake, remember? She smiled and said, If you think about it, all these extra years have been a gift. Hearing this, Anita thinks so. I was wrong. I believed I had never been loved like Arabella, but Anita said to her, I won't let this disease kill you, Your Grace. Hearing this, she smiled and said, You are as kind as always, Anita. She grabs her hand and asked, Could you keep this a secret from Axion? Anita replied, I don't think I can promise that. She left and thinks while sitting in the carriage, It's been 3 years since Axion began working as Her Grace's proxy, so her disease must have been developing for that long, at least. I'm sure she thought I was just being obstinate when I said I wouldn't let her die. However, I don't make promises I don't intend to keep. She said, I know what I have to look for first. She thinks she asked me to keep this a secret from her son, but there is no doubt he already knows. All of this is top secret information from the Lacade family's archives. Axion must be looking into this already. If even the Lacade family couldn't locate these relics, it'll be far more difficult for me. But you are as kind as always, Anita. Nothing in my life has ever been easy. A few days later, Anita's mother, sitting next to her father, said, Just know that the Lacade family is trying to distance itself from us. Her father said, Don't you think you're blowing things out of proportion, dear? They have no reason to distance themselves from us after all these years. Her mother said, That's true, but her father thinks, however, I had the same worries when Lord Axion took over for his mother, but they gave us precious minerals from the north, as if to reassure us. Her mother sighed and said, This time, it feels different. Something was off during afternoon tea. Her father asked, Didn't you say it was just one person? Some baroness or something. Her mother said, Usually, everyone is busy flattering me and trying to look good to me. She said, This is all because our audience with Her Majesty went so badly. A lady said to Anita's mother, You must be so happy to have a daughter like Miss Anita. I heard she's so smart that she's been helping your husband with his work ever since she was young. It's a shame that her talent was wasted because you never sent her to the academy. Her father said, Maybe you're on edge because of the Saints' Day ceremony. Meanwhile, a servant comes and announces, Lady Anita has returned. Her father asked her mother, Will you be talking to Anita? She shook her head saying, It would only ruin my mood even further. Meanwhile, she thinks, Anita? She took everything that Arabella should have had and enjoyed. Even her good reputation. The way she looks down on others is disgusting. You must be so happy to have a daughter like Miss Anita. Her mother said, Tell Anita to mind her behavior. She keeps leaving the manor and going who knows where. Tell her to behave herself. The servant bowed and said, Yes, my lady. Meanwhile, Anita hitting her Slut Vista place thinking, for the last few days, I'd been thinking about how to find an item that could cure the Archduchess. If it's something hard to come by, I'll need someone who can get their hands on rare items. That's when I thought of this place. 3 years ago, after it was confirmed I would not be attending the academy, I set up a trading company through an agent so I wouldn't be left with nothing after I cut ties with the Renards. It's not much, but I have someone I trust to run it. Vanessa, organization head, comes and shouts seeing her, Master. She gets happy and hugged Anita and asked her, What brings you here? Anita said, Let's talk inside. Vanessa said, Okay. They went inside and Anita asked her, Where did all the guards go? I didn't see any of them on my way in. Vanessa replied, I was running low on money because of my last deal, so I let most of them go. Anita asked her, Are you worried you might run the organization into the ground? Anita said, Even if you do, it'll be my fault for failing to employ the right person. Besides, you're doing fine. Vanessa said, Well, I suppose you are the one who appointed a beaten-up commoner from the road as the head. Meanwhile, Anita smiled while thinking, You weren't just some commoner off the side of the road. Back when Arabella was still missing, the Renards would donate money to orphanages for show. Wait! I have something to tell you! That's when I first met Vanessa. The director is taking all the donations for himself. Did the Renards fail to check where the money was going? It's strange enough that embezzlement within an orphanage went unnoticed, but how did you find that out? Well, I used to work for an information broker. But it wasn't all illegal work. You were a fearless commoner, if anything. Plus, this organization really needed you. Vanessa asked her, What brings you here, by the way? You usually don't come to see me very often. Anita said, I'm going to request information from the Cloche Guild. Hearing this, Vanessa shouts, What? Vanessa said, All the big guilds have powerful people behind them. Cloche was formed 15 years ago, yet nobody knows who's behind it. That can only mean one thing. It's best not to get involved with a guild like that. Anita nodded and said it's fine. She thinks, because I already know who the leader of Cloche is. Ned Rowan, Duke Vice-Rosa's aide standing behind a door, said, I shall be coming in, Your Grace. He went inside and Duke Roderick Vice-Rosa was sitting on sofa. He asked him, What is it? He chuckled and said, I'm assuming it's urgent. He said, Show me. And Ned gives him a bag. He opens it and, lost in his thoughts, seeing a blue glass. It was placed by himself at the lake. He gets choked and asked, Who dares? Ned said also. This was in there as well. There was a message. I'm sorry. He gets angry and said, Let me know as soon as you find out who it was. Ned said, Well, I can tell you now, actually. Apparently, she took off her hood and showed her face when she came in. Roderick asked him, Perhaps a noble, then? If she was recognizable. He replied, Yes, Your Grace. Ned tell him, it was Anita Renard. Roderick asked, You mean the young lady that the Empress speaks to at every banquet? Ned replied, Yes, that is correct. We thought she might have something to do with the Emperor, but that didn't seem to be the case. He chuckled while asking, And you're sure it's not just someone who looks a lot like Anita Renard? Ned said, There's no mistaking her. She had jet black hair, sharp eyes. Roderick said, Right, and she has purple eyes. Ned asked, Pardon? Well, I suppose they were purplish, yes. Roderick smirks and said, She got me. Ned asked, Pardon? Roderick said, I knew she was clever back then as well, but who would have thought she would find the same vial? He thinks, I had no idea that I would run into such a young girl at Lake Alkenti in the middle of the night. You're 7? You look no older than 5. Yes, I'm 7 years old. I was sure she had forgotten about me. If you ever need me, I'll help you out one time. But to get my attention, you'll have to do something to really shock me. So I also assumed she had forgotten about the promise I made in passing back then. Ned asked him, "So you've met Anita Renard?" He replied, "A long time ago." Ned asked, "How many times have you run into her?" "I thought you only went to the temple." Roderick replied, "Those without secrets have no charm, don't you think?" He said, "Maybe I'll attend this year's Saint's Day Eve ball." He said, "I'd be a terrible adult if I were to crush a little girl's hopes and dreams." Ned asked, "Pardon?" "The day of the Saint's Day Eve ball." Anita's servant said, "It's too cruel. Red is your best color, but they gave you such a plain dress. And Lady Renard said you may only wear pearls?" Anita asked her, "You think so?" She replied, "It looks like you're going to the temple rather than a ball." Meanwhile, Anita thinks, "Come to think of it, last year I wore a red dress with golden roses embroidered on the skirt. Meanwhile, this year, they gave me this ivory dress decorated with only pearls. I suppose they want to make sure I don't stand out while still allowing me to attend." She recalls the moment when Bella said her, "Anita, that's so pretty." Anita, giving her necklace to Bella, said, "Then you should have it, Arabella." Bella refused to take it and said, "Wait. Look, there's another one just like it with a different stone. We should wear them to the Saint's Day Eve ball." She asked, "What do you think?" Anita thinks, "Because of the Marchioness, I won't even be able to wear the necklace Arabella picked out." The servant said, "It's time to go, my lady." Anita turned, saying, "All right." She went outside and Arabella gets confused seeing Anita not wearing the necklace. Anita thinks, "Is she disappointed that I'm not wearing the necklace?" Bella whispers, "It's okay." Anita thinks, "It's okay? What is she talking about? Does she mean that it's okay we're not wearing matching necklaces? Or that she's glad I won't be punished for it?" Her mother said, "Did you really have to take so long to get dolled up and make us wait?" Anita glares at her, saying, "Does it really look like I got dolled up?" Meanwhile, seeing the intense situation, Bella starts trembling. Her mother asked her, "Why do you suddenly look so pale, dear?" Bella replied, "Oh, it's probably the nerves." Her mother said, "There's no need to be nervous. That's one thing I wish you had in common with Anita." Bella said, "Right? I think so too." Anita thinks, "Here it comes." Her mother shouts, "Arabella, you're better than her in every way." Bella said, "Mother, please stop." Bella turns towards Anita and said, "Sorry." Anita thinks, "Oh, so she was whispering to me so I would know what she was thinking." Anita gets happy after finding this. Axion comes and her mother asked, "Lord Axion?" Seeing him, Anita also gets shocked and asked, "Lord Axion?" Her mother turns, saying, "He seems to be here to escort you. I suppose I'll allow it." Anita gets confused and thinks, "Pardon? Why isn't she trying to stop me?" Axion and Anita went for a walk and she asked him, "What brings you here so suddenly?" He replied, "I wanted to surprise you." Meanwhile, Axion puts a clipper on her hairs and she asked, "What are you doing?" He replied, "A small bribe. So that you forgive me for coming without asking first." Meanwhile, Arabella and her mother left in a carriage. Her mother thinks, "It seems like the Lacade family has no intention of cutting ties with us. I wouldn't have had to let Anita go to the ball if I had known. I only allowed it not to anger the Lacade family." On the other carriage, Axion and Anita were staring each other and Axion said, "You keep staring." Anita asked, "Lord Axion?" He asked, "Yes?" She asked him, "You already know about Her Grace's illness, don't you?" He asked her, "How did you know?" He said, "I'm certain my mother is still under the belief that I do not know." Anita said, "Nothing gets by you." She asked him, "Have you found the Tears of Ash yet?" He replied, "No. It seems to be traveling around as an antique, but I have yet to find it." She thinks, the Tears of Ash. One can extend their life using this relic. But it literally just keeps you alive. However, it's the only holy relic that looks like it'll work right now. He said, "I did manage to find out that it's somewhere within the Empire." She asked, "Really?" I thought I'd look for it too. Anita asked him, What is it? He said, I know you have your own way of doing things, but please promise me that you'll prioritize your safety and try to avoid danger. They went to the destination and a servant comes shouting, My lord. He said, His Highness has a message for you that he ordered me to deliver discreetly. He received it and said, Tell him I have received it. He said, Let's go, Anita. While walking, she noticed a statue and thinks, 2 snares intertwined. Do they represent wisdom or deceitfulness? Whichever one it is, they both fit our emperor quite well. I hear that you have quite a bit of control over the Renards. Then again, perhaps that is natural, given you are the daughter of one of the 5 noble houses. Noticing her, Axion asked, Does that bother you? She said, It's the symbol of the imperial family. He said, Oh, right. When we were younger, you were the one to teach me about social etiquette. Anita thinks, It's nice to be the teacher for a change. Axion said to the guards at the door, We're late, so don't bother to announce us. A guard said, But. Axion said, I do not wish to interrupt anyone. They went inside and Anita asked him, Did you tell them not to announce us to avoid being flocked by people? He said, Yes. He squeezed her hand, saying, I'm happy enough with just you at my side. Meanwhile, a servant comes and said to him, My lord, His Majesty is calling for you. Axion said, How unfortunate. I happen to be busy. The servant said, One moment, my lord, and whispers something in his ear. He said, Fine. You may go ahead. Axion said to Anita, His Majesty seems to be insistent. She replied, It's all right. Go ahead. I'll wait for you. He said, I'll be back soon. Meanwhile, Anita noticed a man saying to Arabella, The younger Miss Renard must be so embarrassed. He asked, How will you make up for this? Meanwhile, Anita comes in front of Bella and slaps the man, and he said, And Miss Renard? Anita said, Go ahead. Keep going. Anita thinks, How pathetic of him to raise his hand at a few drops of wine. The man shouts at Anita, Miss Renard, you have no idea what that woman did to. Anita asked him in a cold tone, That woman? Anita steps forward and slaps him. The man shouts, You have no idea what your older sister did to me. Anita said, What she did to you? She said, That's nothing. The man said, So you were aware of what she did and still believed I was in the wrong? Anita said, Well, either Arabella's hand slipped, or you bumped into her. She said, More importantly, I believe you should be apologizing. The man asked, For what? Anita glares at him asking, Why should I have to look up at you? The man bowed in front of her. She said, Lower. He went lower. She said again, Lower. The man asked, How am I supposed to bow any lower? She interrupts him saying, Mr. Linnet, was it? Did someone pay you to do this? She said, Oh, it must be because of your gambling debts. I don't believe anybody is helping you out anymore. The man said, If you are referring to my hand, these scars are just from practicing my instrument. She said, Don't you know you're nothing but a pawn to be discarded? If you wish to be forgiven, get on your knees. He went on his knees and someone shouts, Miss Renard. What on earth are you doing? She turns to see who was shouting. She thinks, There he is, just in time. She thinks, The man the Marchioness asked to escort Arabella today. He's one of our cousins. Marquis Euclid. Seeing him, she thinks, Why was he just watching this whole time? She said, While you may be all right with turning your back on a family member, I cannot allow such a thing. Euclid asked, Excuse me? Bella said to her, Anita, I'm fine. Euclid said, It's not as though you consider Miss Arabella to be your family anyway. Meanwhile, Anita thinks, what he's about to say before he takes Arabella away is obvious. So now seems like the appropriate time to say this. Anita grabs Bella's arm saying, Of course, I would look out for her. She pulls her towards herself saying, She is my sister, after all. After some time, Anita asked Bella, Did Grand Marchioness Euclid chaperone you today? Bella replied she did. She said, having an older sister like me must be embarrassing for you. She said, oh, I know you just called me that for everybody else to hear. Up until a year ago, I would get chased away from shops just for looking at dresses like this. Bella said, I haven't changed at all since then, but everything else has. You went to social gatherings since you were young, but I'm already 19 and terrible at this. I'm sure you've never made mistakes like this. Anita interrupts her saying, I did. Bella asked, what? Anita said, I did. I have made mistakes like that. She said, young noble ladies usually start practicing social etiquette by having afternoon tea with other girls their age. It's rare to start with a ball like this. Mother and father were being too hasty. Bella said, I couldn't even say anything earlier. I just stared at the ground. Anita said, the pathetic one here was that young nobleman who insulted you. Bella said, but I accomplished nothing today. I was introduced to other ladies my age but couldn't even properly greet them. I'm an embarrassment to our family. Anita asked her, the young noblewomen you were introduced to, were they Miss Disalanta, Miss Savi, and Miss Whedon? Bella asked her, how did you know? Anita said, you're not the only one who finds them intimidating. It could have been much worse. She said, don't think you're an embarrassment. You're a Renard too, you know. Meanwhile, Anita thinks, I knew she would try to gain control of the Renards. She may have the same title, but the Renards have a much higher status. Besides, she was a Renard for a long time, so the chance must have been irresistible. She must have seen this as the perfect time to strike now that Arabella, who knows nothing, has shown up. Anita said, you couldn't have avoided something that was planned out from the start. Arabella asked, planned? By whom? Anita thinks she was planning to appear like a savior and help Arabella after pushing her into a bind. Did she think that would keep Arabella from ever questioning her? Grand Marchioness Euclid knew about the Renard family's oldest daughter. Anita said, our aunt on father's side? Arabella asked, why you mean? Anita said, that's right. The Euclid family was behind this. Bella said I should be careful, then. Marquis Euclid is the one escorting me tonight too. Anita said, by the way, are you just going to believe everything I tell you? Why? Because I'm your sister? Bella said, well, I guess there's that, but… She said, even if you weren't my sister, I would believe you. Admittedly, hearing my old family was doing just fine without me made me a little sad. I think it's more so because I had to hear it from mother and father. Apparently seeing me in person is burdensome. Anita thinks that's how they must have stopped her from going to see her old family again. Bella said, these days I keep imagining how different things could have been. If we had grown up together, I could have been more like you. Bella said, we would have had tea and gone shopping together. Even our tastes could have also been similar. It's nice to think about. She smiled and asked her, have you also imagined such things before?